Roger Penrose, the Nobel laureate in physics, has spent the last 3 decades developing a theory of consciousness in which awareness arises from quantum processes inside neuronal microtubules, processes that by their nature can transmit information backward in time. Welcome to the Reality Revolution. I'm your host, Brian Scott, and today we're going to do a deep dive on revision. Can we change the past? A woman sits on the edge of her bed somewhere in California in the late summer of 1958. She's 42 years old. She's been in pain for 39 of those years. The pain runs from her lower back down through her right hip. It has a specific signature, a deep ache that builds for hours, sometimes days, before peaking in a wave that leaves her unable to walk for the rest of the evening. She's been to specialists across 3 states. She's tried bed rest, traction, manipulation, hot compresses, cold compresses, prescription muscle relaxants, the new injections that orthopedic surgeons are beginning to use in the late 1950s. Each treatment delivers a few hours of relief, sometimes a few days, and then the pain returns. The doctors all agree on one thing. The original injury is old. She was 3 or 4 years old when it happened. She fell backward from a swing in the yard behind her family's house. The fall was severe enough that she was seriously ill for some weeks afterwards. The injury healed. The pain remained. She has paid by her own account more than the cost of a small house in cumulative medical bills across 4 decades. She has nothing to show for it. Her latest specialist, a young surgeon with a brand new practice in Pasadena, has told her there's one more procedure he has only performed a handful of times with confidence borrowed from the textbooks and a price tag he reads aloud while making eye contact. She thanks him. She drives home. She knows she will never see his office again. Her husband watches her on the heating pad in the evenings. Her children, both teenagers, learned long ago to keep their voices low when she is in a bad spell. They've grown up around the contour of her pain. The pain is the third parent in the house. It has a personality. It has preferences. It has a pattern. That August, the worst summer she can remember, the pain becomes almost unbearable. She makes a decision. She will try something the doctors have never offered her. She has heard a teacher describe a practice the previous spring. The teacher said you could go back into a moment from your own past and rewrite what happened there. He said the body, when forced to choose between the 2 competing pasts, would choose the one you reinforced. She had thought he was speaking metaphorically. The pain is severe enough now that she's willing to try the literal interpretation. She lies back. She closes her eyes. She tries to feel herself back at the age of 3 or 4. The first night, she fails. The second night, she fails. The 3rd, 4th, 5th nights, the childhood self she is reaching for refuses to come forward. She keeps trying. Then one night, the boundary slips. She feels the wooden seat of the swing beneath her thighs. She feels her small hands gripping the chains on either side. The chains are cool and slightly rusted under her palms. She feels the swing rise. The wind moves through her hair. The yard rushes beneath her feet. The swing reaches its highest point and begins to slow. In the original event, she had let herself fall backward from that point. The fall was the wound. The wound was the source of 39 years of pain. In this revised event, as the swing slows, she leans forward. She pushes off with her small legs. She jumps clean off the swing. She lands solidly and easily on both feet in the soft grass of the yard. She turns. She runs toward the back door of the house. She calls out for her mother to come and watch what she can do. Her mother appears in the doorway. She walks back to the swing. She climbs up. She does it again. She lets the swing rise to its peak. She jumps forward at the moment of slowing. She lands on her feet. She does it again and again. She keeps doing it until the act of leaping forward and landing safely becomes as natural to her 4-year-old body as breathing. She falls asleep inside the doing of it. Within 2 days, the pain in her back and hip begins to recede. Within 2 months, the pain that has defined her body for nearly 4 decades has vanished completely. A single condition, present continuously since the Coolidge administration, has been ended by an act of imagination. She writes a letter to the teacher who taught her the practice. The letter is eventually published with her initials only LH in a small book that comes out in 1961. Tonight, I want to talk to you about what she did. I want to talk about why it worked. I want to show you how to do it yourself. Because the question this woman answered with her body, the question her 39 years of pain answered the moment they vanished, is the same question I want to put to you tonight. Can you change the past? The book was called The Law and the Promise. The author was a Barbadian-born mystic named Neville Goddard, who had been teaching in lecture halls in New York and Los Angeles since 1938. He had received his core training from a man known only as Abdullah in a small apartment in Manhattan in the early 1930s. The technique LH had used to revise the swing accident was called, in Neville's own words, the pruning shears of revision. Here's exactly how Neville described it. Man cannot leave behind him the mistakes of the past, for nothing disappears. Everything that has been is still in existence. The past still exists, and it gives, and still gives, its results. Man must go back in memory, seek for and destroy the causes of evil, however far back they lie. This going into the past and replaying a scene of the past in imagination as it ought to have been played the first time, I call it revision, and revision results in repeal. Those last 7 words, let me read them again. Revision results in repeal. Neville was claiming that an imaginal act performed with sufficient feeling and conviction retroactively erases the causal weight of the original event. The lived past collapses, a new past takes its place, and because the present moment is the cumulative effect of every past event that led up to it, the new past begins to push out the new present. He went further. The causes of any present evil are the unrevised scenes of the past and the present from the whole structure of man. They are carrying all of its contents with it. Any alteration of content will result in an alteration in the present and future. The teaching is shockingly direct. Whatever you are experiencing right now, the body you have, the bank account you carry, the relationship you live inside, the pain that has followed you since childhood, was built by a sequence of unrevised scenes that you accepted as final. The moment you stop accepting them as final, the moment you reach back into one of those scenes and rewrite it with feeling, the entire structure of your present life begins to reorganize around the corrected past. You're a gardener. Your life is the visible foliage. The roots run backward through time into events you have stopped paying attention to. Pruning means cutting back into the root system. When the root changes, the visible plant must change. The leaves have no choice. Now here's where the physicists enter the story. For centuries, the materialist view of time held that the past was concrete, fixed, and beyond reach. Cause flowed forward. Effect followed. Time was a one-way river. Then, in the late 20th century, that picture broke open. In 1978, the physicist John Archibald Wheeler, the man who coined the term black hole, the doctoral advisor of Richard Feynman, one of the most respected minds in the 20th century physics, proposed a thought experiment that would eventually be performed in laboratories around the world. The experiment is called the delayed choice experiment. Here's the setup, stripped down. A single photon, one tiny packet of light, is sent through an apparatus that gives it 2 possible paths. Whether the photon behaves as a wave, taking both paths simultaneously, or as a particle taking one path or the other depends on whether you measure it. A measurement collapses the wave into a particle. The absence of measurement leaves it as a wave. This was already strange enough. The famous double-slit experiment had shown for decades that the act of observation determines the physical state of the photon. What Wheeler proposed was this: wait until the photon has already passed through the apparatus before deciding whether to measure it. The photon has already chosen its path, or so we assumed. The choice is made, the trajectory is fixed. Then make the measurement. The photon retroactively reorganizes its history to match the kind of measurement you choose to make, If you measure for wave behavior, it had always been a wave. If you measure for particle behavior, it had always been a particle. The decision you make in the present writes the past of the photon. Wheeler's interpretation was radical. He claimed we participate in bringing into being everything the universe contains, the far away and the long ago as much as the near and here. The universe, in his view, was participatory. The act of observation in the present moment reaches backward through time and helps determine what already happened. The thought experiment was performed for real in 2007 by a team at the Australian National University led by Andrew Truscott. They used a single helium atom instead of a photon, and they confirmed Wheeler's prediction. The atom's past behavior, wave or particle, was determined by a measurement choice made after the atom had already traveled through the apparatus. The data is now well established. You can find in Nature Physics the past, at the quantum level, is editable by present moment observation. Yakir Akaranov, the Israeli physicist who worked alongside David Bohm, took this further with what he called the two-state vector formalism. In Aronov's framework, every quantum event is determined by two boundary conditions, one in the past and one in the future. Information flows backward through time as well as forward. The future and the past meet inside the present moment, and the present is the negotiation between them. The implications are still being argued out among physicists, but the core finding has been replicated, peer-reviewed, and accepted. The past is unfixed. The act of observing in the present is causally entangled with what happened before. Neville Goddard had no exposure to any of this work. He was a Barbadian dancer who had received teaching from a man named Abdullah in New York City in the early 1930s. He claimed repeatedly and publicly that his imagination could reach into yesterday and rewrite it. The physicists arrived at the same idea by a completely different road in the laboratory. When the Barbadian mystic and the Princeton physicist agree about the structure of time, you should pay close attention. Wheeler took this to its logical end. He wrote that the universe must be self-observing, self-creating, what he called a self-excited circuit. Observation in the present participates in bringing the entire universe, past included, into existence. The cosmos is no fixed stage upon which observers move. The cosmos is jointly authored moment by moment by every act of conscious observation occurring inside it. Other physicists pushed in the same direction. Henry Stapp, a quantum theorist at Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory, argued that conscious choices are physically efficacious, that mind reaches into the quantum substrate and biases outcomes. Roger Penrose, the Nobel laureate in physics, has spent the last 3 decades developing a theory of consciousness in which awareness arises from quantum processes inside neuronal microtubules, processes that by their nature can transmit information backward in time. Dean Radin, the chief scientist at the Institute of Noetic Sciences, has run hundreds of experiments measuring whether human intention measurably affects quantum random number generators and double-slit experiments at a distance. The results, replicated and meta-analyzed, show statistically significant effects. Mind appears to reach into the quantum substrate. The substrate appears to listen. None of these models have been confirmed in the way the delayed choice experiment has been confirmed. They remain proposals at the frontier of physics, but the proposals exist. Serious, peer-reviewed, mathematically detailed proposals. The materialist picture of a fixed past is no longer the only game in town. It may no longer even be the leading interpretation among physicists who think carefully about consciousness. LH's letter was one of dozens that Neville published in The Law and the Promise. The book was less a treatise and more a collection of evidence. He had asked his students for years to send him their results. The letters arrived. He published the most detailed. You can listen to my reading of the book, The Law and the Promise, here on the channel. 3 more accounts deserve your attention tonight. Each one demonstrates a different application of the same technique. Each one sends with a verifiable outcome. In April of 1967, Neville read aloud from a letter he had received from a woman whose name he refused to speak from the platform out of respect for her privacy. He later described a car accident. Her eye had been damaged in the collision. The doctors had offered her the verdict that medicine usually offers in such moments. The damage was permanent. The tissue compromised, the prognosis narrow. So she had begun her revision the previous September. Night after night, in the silence of her own imagination, she returned to the moment of the impact. She rewound the scene. She sent the oncoming car backward. She brought it forward again. She felt herself press the brakes. She watched the car turn. She steered around the collision that had already occurred in the physical reality. She lived inside the corrected scene until it felt as solid as the room where she was sleeping. The work took months. There were nights where the scene refused to come alive. There were mornings when she woke with the same compromised vision and wondered whether the practice was kind of a self-deception. She kept going. She kept returning to the moment of impact and bending the trajectory of the car around her body. One night, while she slept, the dream itself completed the work. The car returned, the brake engaged, the trajectory bent, and the accident never happened in her interior world. When she awoke, the organ of her eye had begun to change. Neville's exact words from the platform that night from a lecture he titled "Down to the Sea in Ships" were these. She started last September to the point of belief to bring about a complete revision and change the organ of the eye. Then comes into a dream, where in her dream she believes it, she revises the accident, sends the car back, brings the car forward, puts on the brakes, and makes the car go around. And it happened exactly as she imagined it. A man Neville identified only as FB wrote him a letter that demonstrated revision in its purest mechanical form. FB owned a piece of land that had become a financial burden. Later in July, he wrote it to a real estate agent listing the property for sale. The agent's reply arrived a few days later on Tuesday. The letter was a careful and detailed refusal. The agent listed every reason sales were at a standstill in that area. He forecast a long, bleak period of waiting until the first of the year. He recommended FB accept that nothing would happen for many months. FB read that letter once, then he sat down in his imagination and rewrote it. In his revision version, the agent was eager to take the listing. The market was active, the property was desirable, the sale would be quick and profitable. FB read the revised letter over and over inside his own mind. He extended the imaginal scene further, drawing on a teaching from one of Neville's earlier books, Seed Time and Harvest, which described the four functions of imagination as producer, author, director, and actor. As producer, FB set the theme, the lot is sold for a profit. As author, he wrote a brief closing scene. He was standing in the real estate agent's office. He extended his hand to the agent and said, "Thank you, sir." The agent replied, "It was a pleasure doing business with you." As director, FB rehearsed himself as actor until the scene vividly felt real. He could feel the relief that the lifted burden would bring. 3 days later, the agent who had originally written the negative reply phoned FB. He had a deposit for the lot at the price FB had specified. FB went to the office the next day. He signed the papers. He extended his hand. He said, "Thank you, sir." The agent replied, "It was a pleasure doing business with you." The exact dialogue FB had imagined played out word for word in physical reality. This is revision in its most concrete form. The negative letter was a real document sitting on FB's desk. He mentally erased it and rewrote it. The new version repeated until it felt natural, became the version reality delivered. The relief FB described to Neville came less from selling the property than from the incontrovertible evidence that his revised scene had hardened into physical fact. The most stunning revision story Neville ever told involved a child he had never met. His wife came home one afternoon in distress. A close friend's grandchild had been diagnosed with cancer. The doctor had run the tests. The lump was malignant. Surgery was being scheduled. The whole family had gathered around the bed in shock. His wife began to tell him the story. Neville did something most people would consider impossible. As his wife was speaking, he mentally cued her voice out. He could see her mouth moving. The room went silent in his interior world. In that silence, he reconstructed the story she was telling him. He kept the visual of his wife speaking, but he listened instead to her voice telling him a different version of what had happened. In the revised version, the lump had been retested. The diagnosis had been reversed. The child was well. He listened to his wife describe a celebration, a relieved family, a healthy grandchild. That night, as he fell asleep, he listened again. He let his wife tell him the revised story one more time. He fell asleep inside the feeling of having heard the good news from her own lips. A few days later, the doctors performed another biopsy on a different lump from the same area. The results came back. The vote among the pathologists was unanimous. The child had no cancer, because no remedial treatment had been administered in the hospital between the two tests. The doctors concluded the child had never had cancer to begin with. The original sample, they said, must have been misread. When Neville's wife brought the new verdict home, she told the grandmother and the mother what Neville had done. Neither woman accepted that an imaginal act had any power of causation. They concluded the cancer had simply been a misdiagnosis. The biopsy had simply been wrong. Neville knew otherwise. He had heard his wife tell him the revised version. He had fallen asleep inside it. The reality had arrived was the reality he had heard. Revision in his hands had reached past the physical body of a child he had never seen and rewritten the medical record before it had been finalized. The original story his wife had brought home, the story that had filled their kitchen with grief, was overwritten while she was telling it. In 1954, Neville delivered a lecture in Los Angeles he titled The Pruning Shears of Revision. He told the audience a story that had been reported back to him from one of his earlier classes. A teacher had been sitting in his audience. She taught at George Washington High School in New York City. In her classroom, there was a girl who had accumulated black marks throughout the year. Disciplinary infractions, missed assignments, repeated incidents the school considered unacceptable. The faculty had decided to expel her. The paper was nearly complete. The teacher heard Neville describe revision. She heard him explain that you could revise your view of another person, change the past you were holding about them, and watch them change in front of your eyes. She left the lecture with a question forming inside of her. That night, she revised her view of the girl. She brought her before her mind's eye. She refused to see the disciplinary record. She refused to see the missed assignments. Instead, she saw a tender child, a considerate child, a loving child. She held this revised view across many days, refusing the official record on file in the principal's office, refusing the expulsion conversation that was already scheduled. The girl began to change. Her behavior shifted. Her work improved. Other teachers noticed. The faculty reconvened. The expulsion was repealed. The black marks were withdrawn from her permanent record. When Neville told the story years later, he reported that the girl was still attending George Washington High School with a clean file. She had been redeemed by an act of revision performed inside the imagination of one teacher who had refused to accept the official version of who the girl was. This is revision applied to another person, the most subtle and arguably the most powerful application of the technique. You revise your view of who they were. The world reorganizes around your revised view. Their behavior changes to match the new past you have placed inside your imagination of them. Neville called this the deepest meaning of forgiveness. Forgiveness, in his teaching, was never the omission of revenge. Forgiveness was the act of identifying another person with the ideal they wanted to embody, and holding that vision steady against every contrary piece of evidence the world presented. The teacher forgave the girl in the only way that ever produces real change. She rewrote the girl's past inside her own imagination. The girl's present then had no choice but to follow. In fact, Neville is saying in the Bible that when Jesus forgave, he was using revision. You've heard the stories. Now let me teach you the practice. Revision happens in 4 moves. Each move has a specific function. Skip any of the 4 and revision fails. The first is review without judgment. Before you sleep, walk slowly through the events of the day. The conversation that bothered you, the interaction that diminished you, the moment of fear, the moment of contraction, the moment of disappointment. Walk through them without commentary. Refuse to grade them. Simply watch the day unfold the way it actually unfolded. This step exists because an event you refuse to look at remains beyond your reach. The unrevised scene is the one way you push away. The second move, choose the corrected outcome. Decide what should have happened. Be specific. The conversation should have ended in laughter. The interview should have ended with a job offer. The accident should have been around you. Do this in the imperative with the calm authority of someone editing footage. The corrected version becomes the new master. The old version becomes the discarded take. The third move, enter the scene from the first person. Step inside the corrected event. Feel the textures, smell the air, hear the words spoken, watch the faces. You are no longer the editor. You are the actor inside the corrected take. Stay there until the scene begins to feel as solid as the bed you are lying in. This is the step where most people stop too early. The brain has to reach a threshold of sensory richness before the imaginal act becomes the new memory. Stay until the threshold is crossed. The fourth move is fall asleep inside the revised scene. This is the move Neville emphasized more than any other. The state akin to sleep is the state of maximum suggestibility. Whatever assumption you carry across the threshold of sleep is impressed on the deeper layers of the mind. The deeper layers are where the past lives. Fall asleep inside the corrected scene, and you go to sleep with a new past. Neville said it this way: you change your future best when you are in control of your thoughts while in a state akin to sleep, for then effort is reduced to its minimum. You have to repeat the revision across many nights. The eye-healing woman practiced for months. LH practiced until she felt herself back at the age of 3 or 4. The persistence is the price. You can't just do it one time. If you've tried it one time and it failed, then listen to what Neville's teaching. These teachings show you that you have to continue to do it and be persistent. You're doing serious work. The work earns serious results. 3 errors account for most failures. The first error is treating revision as denial. Some people imagine the scene exactly as it happened, then add the line, "but I'm fine with it now." The original scene continues being reinforced. The only thing being added is a label of acceptance. Revision requires a different scene entirely. The footage gets replaced, never relabeled. The second error is editing from the third person. They watch the corrected scene like a movie. They see themselves in the conversation. They see themselves at the steering wheel. They see themselves in the corrected outcome. The imagination remains a thought, and the body never enters the scene. Revision requires embodiment, feeling the textures from the inside, hearing the voices from inside the ears, seeing the faces from inside the eyes. The third error is impatience. They revise once, check the next morning to see whether reality has rearranged itself. When the visible world has failed to catch up, they conclude the practice was useless. The imaginal act requires a critical density before the visible world begins to follow. Density is built through repetition over time. Persistence converts assumption into fact. Neville said it directly: imaginal acts become facts as soon as we feel natural in the act. The word natural is the key. The corrected scene has to feel as natural to you as the breakfast you ate this morning. Once it feels natural, it has become memory. Memory becomes identity. Identity becomes destiny. The path to natural is repetition. Some scenes feel natural after one night. Some scenes take weeks. LH needed multiple nights of returning to the swing before she actually felt the wind in her hair. Once she felt it, the pain that had defined nearly 4 decades of her life had 2 days left. The visible world responds to density. Below the threshold, nothing changes. Above the threshold, the world begins to rearrange. Below the threshold is where most people who try Neville's teaching live their entire lives. They've read the books, they heard the technique. They've run thin little visualizations once or twice. The visualizations had no density. The world ignored them. The 5 witnesses you have heard from tonight all crossed the density threshold. LH crossed it after weeks of trying to feel herself back at the age of 3. The eye-healing woman crossed it in months, when the dream itself completed her revision. FB crossed it by reading his rewritten letter until the new version felt as real as the page in his hand. Neville crossed it by listening to his wife tell him a revised story until he fell asleep inside it. The teacher crossed it by holding a vision of a tender, considerate, loving child against every official record on file. Density is built through repetition, over time, and through embodiment in the moment. There is no shortcut. There's no ceiling. Every night you return to the scene gets denser. At some point, different for every practitioner, every situation, the scene crosses the threshold and the visible world begins to follow. You are about to begin building density right now. You're carrying scenes from your past that have become the operating instructions for your present. The argument with your father, the teacher who told you that you would never amount to much, the relationship that ended with the words you wish had been different, the accident, the diagnosis, the moment of betrayal, the moment of failure, the phone call that arrived with bad news. Each scene, every time you revisit it, gets reinforced as the official record. The official record becomes the cellular memory. The cellular memory becomes the body you live in and the life you lead. The past, in the way most people carry it, is a tyrant. It rules the present absolutely, Your habits, your fears, your patterns, your physical health, your financial circumstances, all of it is cumulative. Revision is the way out. Tonight you have the ability to reach into any one of those scenes and rewrite it. The doctor's verdict can be revised, the argument can be revised, the accident can be revised, the diagnosis can be revised, the moment of public humiliation can be revised. You can return to any moment in your life and rebuild it with the outcome you prefer. Do you really know that your memory is accurate anyway? Neuroscientists are finding now that what we recollect as memory is often wrong. And every time we go back into our memory, we're reconstructing it from our imagination. It's not a file that we pull out. It's not on tape. So you can't trust your imagination anyway. Why would you live with those memories when you don't even know if they're real or not? LH did it with 39 years of pain. The eye-healing woman did it with a damaged organ. FB did it with a real estate letter that had already arrived in his mailbox. Neville himself did it with the child's cancer diagnosis. You hold the same capacity each of them held, the same nervous system, the same imagination, the same access to the editing room of your own life. The scene you choose tonight matters less than your willingness to enter it fully. The wound you select tonight matters less than the depth at which you are willing to feel the corrected outcome. Revision rewards courage. It rewards specificity. It rewards the willingness to pretend, in the privacy of your own imagination, that your life has already been different than it actually was. The pretense repeated with feeling hardens into fact. That is the entire teaching. That is what LH discovered on the swing. That's what the eye-healing woman discovered behind the wheel. That's what the physicists are slowly finding their way toward in the laboratory. Imagination is causal. The past is responsive. The body and the world are downstream of the scenes you reinforce. Choose your scenes now. I want to walk you through a short revision practice now. Just find a comfortable position, allow your eyes to close. Let your breathing slow. Take a deep breath in through your nose. Release it through your mouth. Again, allow each exhale to drop you a little deeper into the chair, the bed, and floor. Wherever your body's resting, the day fades, the schedule fades, the obligations fade. Bring to mind one scene from your life that has weighed on you. Choose carefully. Pick a scene whose outcome has shaped the way you currently live. The scene can be ancient or recent. The age of the wound has no bearing on its editability. See the scenes as it actually unfolded. Walk into the room where it happened. Look at the faces of the people that were there. Pick up as many details as you can for your revision. Let the scene play through its original ending without resistance. Watch it as you would watch a film. You're simply observing. The footage runs to its conclusion. Now take a breath. Allow the original scene to fade. See it dissolving. Decide with calm authority of an editor what the corrected outcome will be. Be specific. The right words spoken, the right embrace given, the right verdict received. Choose the outcome that, had it actually unfolded, would have set your life on a different path. Now, step into the corrected scene from inside your body. You're no longer watching, you're inside. Your hands are your hands, your eyes are your eyes, your voice is the voice that speaks. Look around at the corrected room. Listen to the corrected words. Feel the corrected weight of what is happening. Allow the body to relax inside the corrected scene. The shoulders drop. The breath deepens. The chest opens. You are inside an event whose outcome has changed. Your body knows it. See this and revise it completely now. Stay here for a moment longer. Let the scene saturate the cells. Let the corrected words become the words you remember. Let the new outcome become the outcome you've always known. The original footage is fading. The new footage is becoming the master copy now. Before you open your eyes, make a quiet promise to yourself. Tonight, before you sleep, you will return to this scene. You'll live inside it again. You'll let it carry you across the threshold of sleep so that you go to sleep with a new past. Tomorrow, and every tomorrow that follows, the corrected past will begin to shape what arrives at your door. Take a long, slow breath in. Hold it for a moment. Release. Open your eyes. The wheel has turned backward. The accident has been around you. The scene has been corrected, and the future that follows from the corrected past is now beginning to arrive. LH was a real woman. In the late 1950s California, the 39 years of pain were real. The fall from the swing in the yard was real. The August she could barely walk was real. The night she finally felt herself back at the age of 3 or 4. The night her small hands gripped the chains of the swing and the wind moved through her hair was real. Real enough to dissolve a condition that medicine had failed to touch in nearly 4 years. She wrote a letter. She sent it to a Barbadian-born teacher in Los Angeles. He published it with her initials only in 1961, and the question she had answered with her body, the question her vanished pain had answered, passed from her to the next reader and next, and tonight it has come to you. 65 years later, that letter is still doing its work. Every reader who takes it seriously enters the same editing room she entered. The technique is older than Neville. The technique appears in fragments in the Kabbalah he learned from Abdullah, in the imaginative practice of the Tibetan dream yogis, in the prophetic visions of the Hebrew Bible, in the references to forgiveness in the Bible as according to Neville, in the experiments of modern physics. Wherever consciousness has paid careful attention to its own creative power, this same teaching has emerged. The past is alive. The past is responsive. The past is yours. You can find all episodes of The Reality Revolution at therealityrevolution.com. You're invited to join me at an upcoming event in Anaheim where we will connect you with your future self and we will shift into your greatest timeline on July 24th through the 26th. Tickets are still available. Early bird pricing is still available. You can find the link in the description below at www.brianscottlive.com/Anaheim. Sending all my light and love to everyone listening, and welcome to the Reality Revolution. There's a version of your life where everything you've been reaching for arrives, where the money flows, where love opens, where your body heals, where every step carries the frequency of the self you were always meant to be. That life exists, and the path to it has been 8 years in the making. This July, the Reality Revolution comes home to Anaheim. 3 full days of teaching, meditation, and timeline activation. 9 complete sessions designed to move you from the life you're living to the life that is waiting. Activate your pineal gland. Meet your higher self. Quantum jump into your greatest timeline. Enter the bliss body healing state. Step into the flow of large sums of money. Open fully to love. Shift into a higher density new earth. Friday night, the community celebrates together. Saturday evening, a special appearance from Daryl Anka. And by Sunday evening, you walk out as the version of yourself your future self has been waiting for.
I knew I had to be in the room because it's different from like listening to the meditation videos online.
It was really getting into yourself and how you feel and your timelines.
It's time at the event, and it really is. It's wonderful. So I would highly recommend to anyone, if you get the opportunity to do it, absolutely do it. It really is amazing.
The Reality Revolution live in Anaheim, July 24th, 25th, and 26th at the Hilton Anaheim. 3 days that will change the trajectory of your life. Early bird pricing is available now. Claim your seat at www.brianscottlive.com/Anaheim.